How did the United States reshape public opinion and sell the world wars to the American people? Throughout history, militaries have conducted psychological operations to garner support from civilians, advance national objectives, and demoralize their enemies. Modern-day American psychological operations began in 1917 when the U.S. entered World War I. While not as structurally organized and technologically savvy as in recent combat, PSYOPs in World War I were critical for influencing civilian populations abroad and discouraging the enemy. The printing press and radio transformed domestic tactics during World War I to provide direct, reliable transmission to the masses. Print documents were especially crucial in selling the war to Americans on the home front and were utilized under President Woodrow Wilson's oversight to mobilize U.S. opinion. Wilson launched a massive campaign that tapped into all aspects of American popular culture, including newspapers, movies, the arts, posters, and children's toys, essentially advertising the war effort. Wilson appointed George Creel to spearhead this program, and on April 13, 1917, created the Committee on Public Information, also known as the Creel Committee. The committee organized over 75,000 volunteers known as the 4-Minute Men, who appeared at public locations delivering 4-minute speeches to virtually all Americans to buy Liberty bonds, encourage rationing, and increase wartime production. The 4-Minute Men, many of whom were family and friends of their audience, promoted national unity by spreading messages to support the war effort. The Creel Committee successfully promoted the war effort and turned an unpopular war into one that was more widely accepted, effectively turning the home front into a poster campaign. The committee's division of pictorial publicity illustrated incredibly persuasive posters that spread images of German atrocities and advocated to support home front war efforts. The most famous propaganda poster produced during World War I was James Montgomery Flagg's Uncle Sam. His poster that depicts Uncle Sam saying, "I want you for the U.S. Army," was hugely popular during World War I and reached millions of Americans. To this day, Uncle Sam remains an iconic symbol of American nationalism. The Creel Committee was disbanded shortly after the war amidst controversy over manipulating domestic opinion. However, the committee's model and organization were carried over shortly after in World War II. Unlike World War II, much of the World War I psychological operations were aimed at the home front, and it was obvious where the origins of the information were coming from. This technique is known as white propaganda. However, in future wars, the agendas and lines are much blurrier. World War I proved psychological warfare to be a valuable asset and a key factor in gaining strategic advantages during the war. The U.S. had a huge cyber campaign during World War II, combining efforts from the U.S. Office of Strategic Service and Office of War Information. The OWI's main goal was to utilize radio, print press, and motion picture to inform audiences at home and abroad. Their focus was similar to the Creel Committees during World War I, producing visual media to sway public opinion. The OWI was divided into a domestic branch and an overseas branch. The domestic branch focused on winning the war on the home front by producing books, pamphlets, radio broadcasts, and films that garnered support for the war effort with the help of over 8,000 artists, known as the Artists for Victory. These artists produced 1.6 million posters with 30,500 different designs, fueling American opinions of the war. One of the more controversial aspects of the OWI's domestic branch was the Bureau of Motion Pictures, which had a stranglehold on Hollywood. The Bureau strongly believed that every film produced in the U.S. would either improve or hurt America's image. To ensure the motion picture industry raised public opinion of the war, the BMP created the Manual for the Motion Picture Industry, which strictly regulated what producers could and could not show in their films. The BMP received cooperation from every major studio except Paramount and regulated over 75% of movie scripts between May 1942 and August 1945. Overall, the BMP successfully produced films highlighting heroic Allied forces in productions like No Exceptions and the Why We Fight series. Despite the overwhelming censorship, Hollywood was surprisingly compliant as the majority of major motion picture companies had a strong desire to help the war effort. Unlike the OWI, the OSS focused on international operations. The OSS was created on June 13, 1942, with the intent of organizing covert operations under one agency to wage international propaganda campaigns, spy, and sabotage adversaries. Previously, World War I revolved around white propaganda that did not hide its origins. The OSS adopted black propaganda, where origins were disguised to discredit the adversary. The Strategic Service was successful in using black propaganda to penetrate Nazi Germany and recruiting spies like German diplomat Fritz Kolbe, who passed them over 1,600 intelligence documents. Combined with Special Operations Forces, the OSS successfully incorporated black propaganda into Mediterranean theater operations. Hours after a failed assassination attempt on Hitler, the OSS enacted Operation Sauerkraut, where 16 German prisoners of war were recruited to infiltrate German forces and distribute thousands of forged documents to strain German morale and generate unrest towards German leaders. The operation was so successful that it became an ongoing mission and expanded to infiltrate the Italian military. The most famous role of psychological warfare in World War II was Operation Fortitude in preparation for the Allied invasion of Normandy. The Allies were assisted by cracking the German secret coding system Enigma. Additionally, several double agents, such as Juan Pujol Garcia, were key in supplying the Germans with fictitious reports on the D-Day invasion. This deception, along with constructing decoy tanks and false supply ships, manipulated the Germans into believing the invasion would take place in Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. The Allied forces even went so far as to trick the Germans into believing that an invasion of Normandy would be a diversion to the real attack at Pas-de-Calais by deploying the fake 1st U.S. Army Group under the command of the well-respected General Patton. As a result, the Germans concentrated defenses near Pas-de-Calais and left Normandy weakly defended and vulnerable. Overall, Operation Deception was a key success in keeping German units away from the main fighting in Normandy. After the war, the term propaganda developed a negative connotation where the American people associated it with fascism and communism. Additionally, the U.S. did not believe in pursuing propaganda during peacetime after the war and disbanded all but one PSYOP unit. However, shortly after this, foreign intelligence operations were resumed when the CIA was established as a successor to the OSS. This set the stage for continued covert clandestine operations that became a necessary tool in the Cold War and remain important to this day.